Okay, the next speaker is from Australia, is Chris Mitchell, who's based in the far west of Queensland, so he found yesterday nice and cool, not at all a trouble. But anyway, we'll hand over to Chris, who's going to take us on the journey from Durban to Sydney.
Thanks, Mark. Today I'm giving a short presentation on how things can be either right or go a little bit haywire with management evaluation. I just thought I'd run us through a practical example of it. Fiona Leverington mentioned this morning that for good management factors we need commitment, cooperation and courage. This is more about the courage from my department to let me speak about a park that things haven't always necessarily gone right with, and some of the issues that have been associated with that. I saw this quote a few weeks ago, and I thought, well, that's a good quote, and then I realised who had said it, Colin Powell, and I thought, well, he still needed the courage to go through with it, so here we go. This is sort of a little bit about my journey as well from Durban to Sydney. I was a mid-level manager when we first went to Durban, and I got there and I didn't know what to expect, and I just had my eyes opened by the Parks Congress there, and I wanted to take a lot of those messages away and go back and make differences to our park management. I got back and I realised that a lot of our programs weren't interlinked. There were a lot of different silos happening by themselves, and that's one of my pet hates. Since that time I've worked in a lot of different areas, and I'm still trying to think how to make those things link better. Queensland National Parks has 3 levels of management evaluation. The first is a park categorisation process, which is a statewide process based mainly on spatial data. The second was a rapid assessment tool that allowed us to do most parks in 1 to 2 hours, and we've done 350 parks 5 times since 2003. The third tool is a park integrity assessment, whereby it's a more detailed assessment of each park, normally taking 1 to 2 days. We haven't yet got across the 350 parks doing that. All these systems are currently undergoing review. So I want to talk about one park in particular that we've learned a few lessons from. It's Diamantina National Park, where I'm now based. I've been the ranger there for the last 12 months. It's based in Western Queensland. It's 505,000 hectares, has 300 kilometres of boundary fence, and the surrounding land use is predominantly broad-scale cattle grazing. In 2009, we've undertaken fair detailed monitoring out there, and so I took the opportunity to run a workshop with those monitoring staff about the integrity of the park at the time. And I've updated a little bit of this information as we go through. We found that overall the park was making a difference. Outside the park was somewhat more grazed than inside the park, and we rated that was improving. We had a lot more detailed information than when we first started. This is ecosystem mapping. When we first started, we only had broad-scale land system mapping, so we regarded that as improving. We had a large increase in our data sets of wildlife records. You might note that since 2009, that's plateaued somewhat. So at the moment, we rate that as static. Our visitor management interpretation has improved immensely. We now have something between 4,000 and 5,000 visitors during the peak season. Our engagement with the Indigenous community, the traditional owners of the area, has improved greatly. We've still got a long way to go with it. Our knowledge of our cultural or European history is mediocre, and we've still got to work hard on getting that together. Our budgets have improved, particularly in relation to our capital works. And So then the next assessment tool we had was the rapid assessment. Now this is information that's been gathered for Diamantina compared with the state average since 2003. Now up until 2010 we could only analyse this within years. We couldn't do an analysis across years. In 2010 we used the global study data tool to transform that data, and we were actually able to get a glean what was happening across years. And you can see from there, 2006 to 2010 was a dramatic decrease in the management of the park. The questions we asked didn't actually explain why this was happening. But in 2013, when I started out there, I found that there was a large amount of fencing was damaged due to floods and natural attrition. And I found mobs of 400 and 500 head of cattle on each major mooring area. So you can imagine that I was somewhat astounded to find this, considering that the other work we'd been doing was indicating everything was going all right. So what we were able to track was that in 2005 there had been a decision made by management to relocate staff to another management unit 300 kilometres away, which didn't have much impact for another 2 years. In 2009 that decision was reversed, and it took another 2 years to get staff back on the park. Now you might note that there was no actual change in FTEs, or the actual staffing operations, but that had a dramatic long-term impact. And it's the time lag of the management decisions that we've got to take into account. So some of the key lessons we've got, and I think some of the speakers beforehand have spoken about this, was that our information feedback loops can be very slow unless we're using the right tools at the right time. Good subjective data is as important as qualitative data. On-ground staff, the eyes and ears of our management effectiveness, they can tell us what's going on almost on a day-to-day basis. But there needs to be a robust, inclusive process to include that knowledge, and that's the process of collecting that can be as important as any other tool we've got. We need to ensure that our monitoring is targeted and contains elements that are short-term as well as long-term. We could have avoided a lot of heartache if one of our monitoring was number of kilometres of fence that we repaired each year. And most importantly, we've got to make it an adaptive management, and we've got to, until we can use the results of the evaluation in day-to-day park management, feedback loops are going to remain slow, and staff will not be able to use those evaluation tools very, very well. And quite often, good park management is as simple as maintaining the boundary fence. Thanks a lot.